From despair to delight as the Arsenal show their might. In this title race, we continue to fight, and Aston Villa show why they are Wagwan, everyone. I hope you're doing well and welcome back to the Arsenal show. And this is by myself. It's an early one. Our Arsenal match reaction to that game. The whole reaction to the whole week, the feeling at the club right now. And from my personal opinion as an Arsenal fan, wow, I'm still saying wow, like it was yesterday or like the game was just played 60 minutes ago. So much emotion went through that moment there in those 90 minutes. So early into a weekend, so early onto a Saturday. And you know what? It's put us in a good mood. It's put me in a good mood and was with a smile on my face so early on. So yeah, what a way to start the weekend. Arsenal, thankfully, we don't have a midweek game where, you know, we hope to bounce back on or something looking like that. We can be happy and smiling out for the rest of this stream. And thankfully, and for the rest of the week as well. Guys, I'm losing my head. I'm happy and delighted that we are back on top of the league. And what a difference 2 games can make, you know, from Wednesday when you guys joined us for the watch along, the Thursday night, well, not even Thursday night, throughout the whole Thursday, I was feeling it. I spoke about it in the Premier League preview show with my brother Edmin, speaking about my feelings, my emotions going into that. And yeah, and this weekend, I didn't expect for us to be so top so early and so soon again. After Manchester City held it down for a nice and kept our seat warm for about 48 hours to 72 hours or so. But here we are getting ready to talk about it. But before we do, let's give a big hello to a couple of people that we got in a chat. And I know it's early, so I'm not expecting many of you here. So big up my brother Edmin in the place. He says earliest stream ever. I know. G Staffy saying hello. See, I'm rhyming again. If you missed that intro, I do recommend to go check out the intro right at the start. You might enjoy it. G Staffy, hope you're doing good. Hope you're well. What a bounce back from Arsenal. And G Staffy, we know as our resident Middlesbrough fan. That's what I'm going to call you now. And you'll be happy with that. But yeah, she does follow the Borough and they're looking after a former striker in, a former gunner striker in Tubarak Pom. And he's doing excellently well. As he will definitely be playing in the Premier League next season, G Staffy, whether it's for Middlesbrough or not. But I hope you're keeping good. And we've got to get into it because I'll talk about the feelings first of this game and how important this victory was, because we came off of it. We was coming into this one, very short turnaround from the Manchester City game, from that pain, that hurt that we all felt, and feels like a distant memory right now, given the feeling that we have at this moment in time. And it's amazing how things can change so quickly. But I'm just trying to take myself back to it, where we lost by 3-1. It felt like we lost a grip in our control on this title race, although we had a game in hand and we felt like, you know what, we do still have a game in hand. Things can change. We'll wait and see. But Manchester City, you know, they're starting to begin to show their experience, we felt like, and Arsenal showing their inexperience at points. And it was a massive blow. And yeah, this Aston Villa game was a test of character. And even before that Manchester City one, I was always looking at this Villa game and saying, this is the big test. No matter what happens post Manchester City, how we respond. If we beat Manchester City and drew or lost to Aston Villa, that kind of shows that this team, we still infallible, and we're showing that, you know, we can step for the big moments, but we know that there is still, when you need to go on and push on from there, is another test. However, when we lost to Manchester City, it's really showing that we need to bounce back. We kind of saw that in the opening minutes, that it was difficult and it was hard initially in those opening minutes, where I'm sure a lot of teams who have had to play in this short turnaround, whether it's from a Champions League game or Europa League, in fact, it really does hinder you and affect you in the opening minutes. And I think there's more evidence and proof for that. And I came on later on in the weekend with Manchester United beating Leicester by 3-0. But their opening 25 minutes or so was very similar, not even similar to ours. It was worse. It was lackluster and it was very worrying to begin with. But as an Arsenal fan who's been in the Europa League now for a bit, I've seen a lot of those starts after Europa League games, even against, the likes of Southampton when we haven't been at our best, Leeds, and that's this season after Europa League games, travelling away from home. It is hard to start fast and it is hard to start at the tempo that we usually do. And looking at that starting lineup, which was announced before the game, and what we saw throughout the whole of the first half and the beginning of the second, there was 2 changes made by, Mikel Arteta from the Manchester City game. Excuse me, sorry, had to sneeze right there. But we saw Benjamin White come in for Takehiro Tomiyasu, who made that error, that horrendous error up against Manchester City to give them the lead for the first goal. So Benjamin White came back in. He was struggling really to, I wouldn't say struggling, but struggling's a bit harsh. But he had a dip in form and he wasn't quite reaching the levels that he was previously and prior to the World Cup. And it was really since that Manchester United game where he wasn't quite performing at his best and showing that energy and the composure on the ball and that overlap for Saka. But he was brought back in and he had a chance to respond and kind of show Arteta why I deserve to be brought back in. And Trossard, who was called it to start by many fans, not necessarily by all fans that were asking for him to come in on that left wing, but they wanted to see Trossard and Martinelli and Eddie Nketiah replaced, but he kept his spot up top. But Trossard, no matter what, no matter who he's coming in for, deserved to start, giving his cameos off of the bench. So there were 2 big changes going into it. Jorginho kept his place because Thomas Partey wasn't fit, and that, was giving us a little bit of a worry away from home to some Arsenal fans, wondering how Jorginho can perform. He was brilliant against Manchester City, but you're thinking that's at home. It's going to be a different type of game with Ollie Watkins running in there, Coutinho, and then Bailey, although Bailey didn't start. But, those types of players, those nippy players in and around those areas there, you're thinking maybe that Jorginho lacks a bit of that, physicality and the athleticism to cover those spaces. That's what a lot of people's thoughts were going into it. And that first half, it wasn't awful, but it certainly wasn't the Arsenal that we've known this season. And it's kind of been the Arsenal that we've seen in the past few games, with that little bit of rustiness and not the connections not linking as well. Arsenal not creating many chances as Arsenal conceded the first goal to Ollie Watkins. For me, I thought Saliba should have done better in that moment, and what he could have done better is get tighter to Ollie Watkins as that ball is played, as he's brought it down, minimize the space. Saliba can trust his pace and his athleticism to cover the ground if Ollie Watkins does decide to knock it past, but he was a bit reluctant to do that, and he tried to marshal him in a very Van Dijk fashion and tried to react and block the shot afterwards. But Ollie Watkins did an excellent job of shifting the ball out to his left foot and finishing it nevertheless. Although Saliba, you would say, and there was an occasion in the second half where it was in a similar area to begin with. It was a long ball played down the channel by Aston Villa, and Saliba was much more aggressive, and Ollie Watkins didn't even get a shot or a chance, or didn't get into the box from it, because Saliba was a lot more aggressive and he recognised the error he made for that first goal. But the error really did come from Zinchenko in that first goal, with him giving the ball away. Matty Cash was able to nick in, run down the channel, play that long ball. And then, as we just said for Saliba, what he should have dealt with better there. So Arsenal started the game poorly, and it was an even bigger dent to the confidence and an even bigger test to the character of this side. You're gonna have to, you've hit a rough patch now. you're away from home in the Premier League to Aston Villa, who generate a good atmosphere at Villa Park throughout these home games, especially against the big sides. It's early on, and your wings have been clipped right at the start. And Arsenal, everyone's saying the crumble is well and truly happening. But then Arsenal reacted well after that goal, and we kind of pinned Villa back without really creating too many chances. Jorginho spraying the passes. I thought he was excellent throughout the whole game, really, and he did an outstanding job. And for me, I'm going to say this early on, my man of the match, but we'll talk about everyone else as well, and I'll give you my reasons why. But he's the only chance that we created was an offside one, as Ben White made an overlapping run, which we haven't seen as much this in recent weeks. Clipped it out to him from that position, and then he cut it back. And Tyrone Mings, I'm not his biggest fan, as talking about Tyrone Mings as a Premier League centre-back or a modern-day defender, but he did excellently well to hook it off the head of Eddie Nketiah as it crashed off the crossbar. Arsenal was starting to warm up into it, and then we managed to grab that stunning goal from Bukayo Saka. Excellent finish. But then soon after that, we'll talk more about Bukayo Saka later on as well, people. Aston Villa kicked Saka a little bit. He was getting fouled, and I think his boot was taken off just prior to this moment. But they played it out of the back now, out of their defence, into Kamara, played it forward, and it was pretty easy for Aston Villa to be playing through the lines as Saka was kind of limping back towards his own goal. And then next thing you know, Alex Moreno runs around on the outside of Benjamin White, where he's having to mark two players because Bukayo Saka is struggling to get back, so he's not sure who he should go with. He decides to go with the outside runner in Moreno, but that leaves space in between him and Saliba, where the ball was picked through. I'm not sure by the Aston Villa player was. I think it was Camara as he just went through the middle of the park with ease and played it into Moreno, cut it back. Buendia with the fake, and Xhaka trying to come over and help and defend as it goes through his legs, and Coutinho with that whip into that corner with that Wayne Rooney-esque finish where he opens up his body. He fools the goalkeeper, makes him thinking he's going to go to the top corner and to the keeper's left in that sense, but whips it back around and cuts it in to the keeper's near post. It was an unstoppable goal, really. It was a really good goal from Aston Villa, but Arsenal could have done a lot better in preventing Aston Villa to break through with such ease. But it was clinically taken, and all of Aston Villa's goals in that game were. And Arsenal down behind yet again. The crumble is well and truly on, as people were saying. And this was the team that ended a half as it was 2-1. Arsenal, I don't think really we did enough to score more than the one goal that we got. Maybe barring that, that excellent defensive clearance from Tyrone Mings. We didn't really get in behind Aston Villa as much, who weren't looking strong defensively, but neither were we at that moment. And that was a huge halftime team talk as Arsenal were looking at their third defeat in 4 games in the Premier League and their 4th defeat in 5. And that's what it was looking like at that moment in time. And that was a huge second half to see what Arsenal, how we're going to respond. And in all honesty, let me take this team off, because I just got to say, the character, the mentality from this young core, this young group of players. Yes, we've added some experience in there with the likes of Zinchenko, Jorginho in January, and Xhaka's still in there. And we do have those, but a young core group to show that mentality and bottle after us. A lot of them have already had that sense of failure in not being able to secure the top 4 spot, with your Ramsdales, your Whites, your Odegaards, your Nketiahs, your Sakas, your Martinellis and whatnot. It was massive. It was huge, and it was a great performance in that second half. And man, the reason why it's a roller coaster, because we should have scored more. We should have scored way earlier than we did. Zinchenko, he came out like a different man in that second half, I thought, and he wasn't as sloppy as what we saw him in the previous games. Zinchenko, in that second half, when he made that error where Matty Cash was able to pounce on it, he was brilliant in how he set up and how he was so alert and covering each space and taking on that responsibility and doing it at such a high level. Thought he was brilliant in the second half. We know what he does and how he likes to maneuver in those central areas. It's so important to make sure that he's on the top of his game and that he's performing so well, because he has most touches out of anyone in this team. And that's where opposition teams are really allowing us to have the space in these areas now. I kind of thought, from the start of the season when I was analysing games, I saw them try to negate the players like Zinchenko, but then that left more room for the players like Saka and Odegaard to be at their best and create chances. And now we've seen teams really sit back and allow our fullbacks and defenders and deep line players, whether it's Jorginho or Partey, have as much as the ball, but really try and pounce when that front five, when the two midfielders and the 2 8s and Odegaard and Xhaka usually, the wingers in Martinelli and Saka, especially Saka on that right side, and then really try and squeeze and not allow the connections in those areas there. That's what we see a lot of the times with these teams, and that's what we've seen from Everton, Brentford, Manchester City as well. When you watch your Manchester City going long ball, that's what they're trying to do and trying to pounce on. Aston Villa tried to, but they weren't able to maintain it at a high enough level or really get near our guys, especially the likes of Zinchenko and Odegaard in that second half. And that's when Zinchenko was able to get his goal off of a quick corner. That was obviously something that was seen and scouted by the Arsenal staff, because there was a clip going around on Twitter that I saw last night of Stevenage doing the exact same thing and doing the exact same action in their FA Cup win at Villa Park. And we took quite a few short corners, and I think we've started to do that, and we're trying to mix up our game a little bit since that Everton game. We've tried to mix up our corners because we haven't really been at our best. We haven't scored as many set pieces as we did at the start of the season with all the new techniques, new setups in terms of our corners. We saw in the very first game of the season against Crystal Palace a goal there, and then even against Leicester, and then against your Brentfords away from home and stuff. So teams kind of cottoned onto our set pieces, and we're trying to mix them up a little bit. And we really did do it a lot against Aston Villa, and I thought that was quite interesting. And it really paid off in the end with Zinchenko striking his first Premier League goal. How this man hasn't scored a Premier League goal previously is beyond me, with a player of such high technical ability, from the confidence that he seems to exuberate when he's on the pitch as well, in taking a lot of these long shots, which haven't worked out in other games. The Brentford game, he was doing it too much, and it was getting to my annoyance at that moment where he's taking out these pop shots. But someone who can do that and has good such technique and looks assured when he does take his shots as well. It is a massive surprise that was his first goal, but you saw the reaction from him and the group as soon as that hit that back of the net. No celebrating, no, relief. No, we straight back onto it, run straight back. He didn't even look at the ball because he knew someone else was going to get that already. And that's how we were feeling as a fan base at that moment. It was one of them frustration like celebrations when you're like, yes, that's it, man, come on. And you're doing all of them actions there. I'm sure a lot of you Arsenal fans watching now were feeling that way. And those who aren't Arsenal fans, of course, you were feeling a bit frustrated in a different way, not celebrating. But that moment was key there. Zinchenko took that shot, took that opportunity. And that's something we've been asking for from our players when we get into those situations in and around the box. Granted, Xhaka against Manchester City had showed that hesitancy, didn't want to do it. We've seen it in other occasions as well in and around there. Zinchenko was the first one to do it, pulled that trigger, bang, goal, 2-2. Then Arsenal created a bucket load of chances that fell to an Eddie Nketiah. And I just want to say this right now in terms of Eddie Nketiah and overall, right? Recently, since that Manchester United game, he hasn't been at the level in terms of his performance. I'm talking about his overall performance, not these moments where he is missing these chances. I don't think his hold-up play has been as good or as sharp as he was when he initially first came into the team, when it was against West Ham, and then in that Brighton game and in the Manchester United game and Tottenham. I think he has been feeling when I say fatigue, I know he's not started many games at all this season, but in that short space of time when you're coming in out of the cold, in essence, which he did, and then playing week in, week out, I think it was starting to take his toll on him as this is the first period and time in his career where he is played a heavy load of minutes and starting games week in, week out, the 3 games a week thing that we've seen in recent times since the return of the World Cup. That's the first time he's really doing it with the responsibility. And it's not an excuse, it's just a fact. And it's something that he's going to have to work on and improve and improve his physical levels, because I remember in the West Ham game, which we watched after his goal, there was a bit of fatigue and heavy touches in those areas there. But against Manchester United, White was so key and vital because he was there in that big moment and took it. But against Manchester City, he missed those big opportunities and suffered a lot of criticism, and it was rightly so, for missing big opportunities in that big game. As Manchester City, they didn't miss their big opportunities and they took them, but he missed them again today. I mean, in that game against Aston Villa. But what I'm going to give credit to, and what I'm going to say for us Arsenal fans in particular, we've had strikers, even top strikers at that international level strikers, in these games and in sort of these games where the chances simply aren't falling for them. In Lacazette, and they're not getting into the positions to take these chances. And it has been at the detriment of our game, and we've not been able to create many goal-scoring opportunities. That's one little bit of praise I'd give him there and say, you know what? That's what Eddie does do. No matter what, no matter how many times he misses them, which he certainly needs to improve on, if he's going to be a striker at this top level and he's going to be wearing that number 14 shirt for the long term, he is going to need to take these chances. And he's going to need to take at least one of them. I don't expect him to score every one, as we saw, with the guy in the thumbnail who scored 26 goals in this season, missing easier chances than that. But I am impressed with is the positions that he's taken up and his tenacity to keep going. And we saw that with Ødegaard's missed opportunity, which felt like at the time it wasn't going to be our day. His tenacious intent to keep pressing each and every ball and hound Aston Villa defenders and the opposition defenders, whoever it is up against, and make those runs and show his strength, and a tremendous leap with him when he hit the bar as well, but show his strength to keep going and persevering and play it across to Ødegaard in a situation where Ødegaard scores. We're here praising Ødegaard and we're praising Eddie Nketiah for doing what we will require of him in those moments. We know with Eddie Nketiah, he's not going to give us Jesus levels in terms of technical assurance or technical ability in terms of the link up and the connections, especially with the left side, which I think has suffered since the loss of Jesus. And, we've seen Martinelli and Xhaka's form dip, and we'll talk about Xhaka in particular as well at some point later on. But that I want to cut Eddie a little bit of slack. And when Jesus returns, I don't think that Jesus is going to have the same responsibility or the same load of responsibility as he did earlier on in the season. Whereas I think Eddie has improved his game even more from when we gave him that new contract. And he improved his game even more from last season overall. But I think that once he comes out of the team and we're able to rotate a little bit more for Premier League games and for Europa League games as well, for the both of them, and really let Jesus get himself back and build that fitness up, and doesn't have to start, can even come on in the 60th minute, and then, he can start games, and then Eddie comes on beyond that and starts the next game. I think it will be an interesting... I do think it will be an interesting dynamic between those two. Once Jesus comes back, because we literally only have 2 recognised strikers. So we're going to have to be relying on those 2 to remain fit for the rest of the season, especially. But yeah, so that we can afford to rotate them for those games as we get into the thick and into when the Europa League starts kicking back up for us. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Eddie. But after that, after those missed chances, the 90th minute was getting into it. Before we got into the 90th minute, I forgot to mention that Ramsdale save. That game-changing moment because Leon Bailey broke through. It was an excellent first touch by Leon Bailey as well. Why does my voice keep breaking whenever I do? But yeah, as Leon Bailey's first touch on that right-hand side came down, took the shot, shifted it onto his right foot, onto his weaker foot, similar to what Ollie Watkins did, went for the near post, went for height, which is what the coaches teach you in those situations. I like that Saka goal up against Leeds when he went for height and got it past Meslier there. It was a tremendous reaction save. It was for a goalkeeper that didn't have much to do, and it was already beaten twice, by the way. So that it shows real high levels of concentration and goalkeeping ability. And I got to liken it to the Man United game again. Man United goalkeeper David De Gea had to make 2 crucial saves early on, which changed the aspect and the outlook of that game for Leicester. And Manchester United were able to capitalise and win by 3-0. And Ramsdale, it's easier for us to say it because it was way closer towards the end and towards the end of the game where Jorginho took that shot. By the way, I know it's an own goal for Emi Martinez. As you can see the poll in the chat right now, who's the man of the match? Jorginho, Saka, Jorginho, Saka. Who else have we got in there? Erdegaard or Emi Martinez. And it's 25% right now for Emi Martinez. He's joint second with Saka. That's what I like to see, you guys. Make sure you get them votes in there. But that strike, with first time cutting away, is a for him to hit the bar. You got to say it's unlucky because he caught it sweet and it was brilliant technique. But then we got a little bit of luck straight after that with the ball hitting off the back of Emi Martinez. And yeah, that's what I've been trying to talk to people and say, yes, I can hear what you're saying. It's lucky in terms of the goal hit the back of his head and it's gone in. But if that hits the bar and it doesn't go in and it hits up Emi Martinez and goes out for a corner, what are you saying? That's unlucky from Jorginho, aren't you? So it swings in roundabouts, and from what we faced this season with the refereeing decisions just from a week ago, last week Saturday, I think we deserve a little bit of luck, and we certainly got it. And Jorginho stamped his name in potential Arsenal folklore if Arsenal go on to win the Premier League this season. Of course, potentially, if we do, with a massive goal, with a crucial moment. And the fact that he took that shot, which I said early on about Zinchenko, we haven't seen those shots being taken in those moments or shown with much technical assurance as Jorginho and Zinchenko did, and that was huge. And Martinelli, of course, at the end was able to grab the 4th goal, and the delight and what those 3 points, how they made me feel prior to the Manchester City game. It was such relief, and it felt like something that we can build upon. Not in terms of really the overall performance across the 90 minutes, because I only thought the second half and the second 45 was really encouraging and something to build upon, and something that we can be delighted for as fans, and something that we can be, it wasn't lucky. It wasn't a lucky win as what a lot of people are saying. And this is why, and I've got a statistic and I've got a graph to show you. If you have a look at this attacking threat chart right here, if this is something foreign to you and something that you haven't seen before, basically what you can see in that, that dark maroon, or if you can't see in that purplish phase, if you're not watching the video, Arsenal had a lot of attacking threat in that second half. And the bigger the graph is, the bigger the line is, and how further it stretches out to the right, the more likelihood of a goal was going to be scored there. And if you have a look at Villa's, it just kind of shows you how well that they did in terms of their finishing as well in that first half, which was ruthless because they didn't have much attacking threat in that and beyond before that, or even after that in terms of the game until we hit the 90th minute mark. So Arsenal, that's not lucky for me. When you miss so many chances and you get into those positions and you make that pressure tell, which Aston Villa just simply couldn't cope with in the end. They just simply couldn't do it. And the pressure told with a little bit of luck as well, but I don't think the whole performance of the 3 points is lucky in essence. But before I go into some individual players and some individual battles, we've got plenty of people and we've got plenty of comments in the place right now. I just want to big up each and every one of you for tuning in. Really do appreciate it, as it's an earlier stream as well. And we want to get you guys involved. And if you've got any thoughts, if you're watching afterwards, make sure you do hit that comment section as well. And we'll get talking in there as well. But big up to each and every one of you that's locked in right now. As I can see, big up my brother Realist in the place as well. My brother in here as well. What else we got in terms of this? Just scrolling down. Big up my brother Moss in the place. Hope you're keeping good. Talking about Saka, redundant looking still. Old Alexander Zinchenko is everywhere. We'll definitely talk about this. And, I'm going to start this comment and we'll go back to it as well. Big up Mr. Wesbird in the place saying, I'm in the house. Good evening, all. Good evening to yourself, Mr. Wesbird. I hope Mrs. Wesbird is doing good as well. And actually, there's Mrs. Wesbird. It's nice to have the Weses in the house, the Wesbirds in the house. And I hope you're having a good evening on this fine Monday and enjoying Arsenal being top of the league once again. It's great to have you both in here. And what have we got in here? We got Mr. Wesbird saying we have a few mini captains, in my opinion, Zinny, Xhaka, as well as Erdegaard. I think this is important to keep on track. Very true. And that's kind of relating to where I spoke about the leadership that we have at this club now and the young leaders that we do. And those captains that were on the pitch there in Zinchenko, Xhaka, and Erdegaard, and they're just to name a few, the young ones, and those are the ones that we're looking to build upon. Xhaka is he's more there for the short term, and we'll talk about him in terms. I know I keep saying we'll talk about him, and in terms of what's the next step for him, and in the very short term, was in the next game. But yeah, definitely a player that we're happy to keep around the club, and those likes of their Zinny, Xhaka, and Erdegaard. I can't believe it that some people think that don't think Zinchenko's a leader. Gary Neville's one of them, and he said it in the overlap, and he was like, Zinchenko's not a leader. I'm like, are you mad? Ask any Manchester City fan or any Manchester City player that's been in a dressing room with him. And the fact that he's the captain of Ukraine now says a lot. And he's been the captain of Ukraine in probably the most darkest moments in that country's history, where they were unfortunate not to get past Wales and make it to the World Cup. But he's shown real character to even keep playing the sport. And at a certain point, easier to say now where, we're far removed. It was a year ago today when Ukraine was invaded by Russia. And remember, he still kept playing. And he had a massive part to play in Manchester City's title win when he came off of the bench and had a huge performance. And I had a huge hand against the team that we just beat on the weekend in Aston Villa, where they were 2-0 down. And he was able to remain focused on football whilst worrying about his family's health and the people of his country. So that I don't understand. And these are things that show leadership, the fact that you can do that and you can be a vocal figure and a loved figure throughout the team and the fan base as well, and someone who's highly regarded and respected. And then, of course, Erdegaard, who is the captain of Norway and the youngest captain of Norway in their history. And then Xhaka, the captain of Switzerland. So, yeah, good point right there. Very true. When Steve said I thought he was going to talk about we've got Super Mick Arteta. I can at any moment. You know what it's on, that can happen. And Mr. Wesbird also says right here, Eddie's head doesn't drop when he misses a sitter, which is good. But he can't keep missing at some stage. He's got a pot. Yeah, he's got a pot 1 or 2. Indeed, the jury will stay out on Eddie until he becomes more prolific. And I think that's excellently put there by Mr. Wesbird in saying that Eddie's head doesn't drop when he misses a sitter, which we've seen even top strikers in our time and our time supporting Arsenal when they've missed sitters. It has affected their game and their confidence for a period of time, whether it's in a single game or throughout a stretch or a game stretch. When I think of the game, a stretch of games, is Lacazette. That's the first one that comes to mind. But you are right. His head doesn't drop. And that shows a good mentality from Eddie. But you are right. If he's going to wear that number 14 and he's going to be in Arsenal for the duration of his contract or even further, he's going to have to put more of those chances away. And the big reason why he needs to put them chances away, and we give Jesus a bly, shall I say, or we don't mind him missing as many chances, is because Jesus gives us something else, and he gives us so much outside of scoring goals and making the team more efficient, more dangerous and potent going forward, and the whole team, what he does provide for us there. Whereas Eddie, he doesn't, it's not saying that he doesn't do any at all, but it's not at the level of Jesus, which is probably the best false nine out there in the world at this moment in time. And that's based off what we've seen this season. I know it's been a while since we've seen him play, but what we saw in that spell, I'm not seeing a false nine do what he can this season. And you know what? There's some good ones out there at this moment in time, but yeah, we need Eddie to be taking those chances, just like how Manchester City are getting away with, Haaland's getting away with it. And I'm not saying getting away with it as if he's doing something wrong, because he's putting the ball in the back of the net at the end of the day and scoring so many and creating chances with his movement, which I believe Eddie does. Eddie does create chances with his movement, but you've got to take them to receive that credit, don't you? So yeah, it's a good point on Eddie and Ketty there. Mr. Wesbird, and then we got Mrs. Wesbird saying we have to tighten up in both boxes, cut out defensive errors and conceding avoidable goals and take our chances. Once again, absolutely agree. And Erdegaard spoke about this in the Manchester City game in terms of we took our chances in both boxes, although two of the goals, two of the goals came from outside the box. But yeah, you know what I mean? We have to be more proficient and more efficient in those in the opposition's box. And then in our boxes, we need to defend much better and prevent teams from even getting in there a lot of the time, like how Ollie Watkins was able to in the first goal, and then they were easily able to get into our third of defending for their second one. So yeah, definitely Wesbird, definitely have to agree. That's something that we're going to need to work on, and something that I've got on later on in this stream that we'll definitely talk about, and it kind of links with Granit Xhaka as well. Westbird's cooking dinner, multitasking. Big up my brother in here as well. Hope you're keeping good. Vibes is in the place. Oh, nice to see you, Vibes. Hope you're keeping good. And Jake, long time no see, my brother, but I know you came in the other day, and I hope you're all good, man. I hope everyone's all good, and the family's keeping well too. What else we got in here? Jake, exactly. Tony Adams was captain, an Arsenal captain at 21. Arsenal legends, got a statue. So that says it all, man. And that's having those young leaders, bro, was able to keep Arsenal and, he was there for Arsenal's one of their most successful periods, I would say. Yeah, so yeah, in recent times, definitely. So yeah, what a leader he was indeed. Doesn't get a mention like other Arsenal legends. Yeah, I think it's, depends on the people that you speak to as well, Jake, as well, in terms of age and that, because it's hard for me to really talk about Tony Adams and how great of a player he was, because I wasn't feeling the emotion of him whilst he was there. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, Moss in the place saying Erdegaard must be close to being the young Arsenal's youngest captain. Yeah, he must be close. He is, and he must be there. And it's only Tony Adams who's probably there, who's younger than him as well. Big up to yourself, my brother CM. Said blessings to T and the TTF. Hope everyone's having a great start to the week. And that's what I hope that you are as well, my brother. I really appreciate you. By the way, the football pervert fumbled again. Exactly that right there. And he was in particular the football pervert striker in Haaland and Foden. And in all honesty, they fumbled it yet again. But yeah, that win was vital. That win was vital. And I just want to talk about some of the key performances that I wanted to highlight. As I want to talk about not one player. I'm going to start off with this one. I don't think I've really heard much being spoken about him. And Benjamin White, I thought Benjamin White was excellent against Aston Villa, and he returned to his best that we saw earlier on before the World Cup and in certain games after that. But we haven't seen it on a consistent level since the return of the World Cup, where he was overlapping, going beyond Saka, doing nutmegs on Aston Villa players, and in showing that cool, calm composure that he does possess, and why Arsenal wanted him so much and were willing to shell out the 50 million at the time, which was seen to be an overpay. But Benjamin White, in his character and what he gives and in the confidence that he has in his ability and arrogance, is a confidence bordering on arrogance. And this is why I think he's not the most likable character if you're not an Arsenal fan. But if you are an Arsenal fan, you like it, you appreciate it, because he does seem to have that brash, like, I don't care nature, which people over talk about too much at times. But he really carries that, and he has that on the pitch to our benefit. And I thought his energy, the legs that he was providing beyond Saka, and the support out there, where we've seen Saka really get double teamed and, kicked around the park. But I'll talk about that in a bit. But yeah, with Benjamin White, I thought he was excellent, and he really did help Saka in those battles down that right hand side and provide support. And his quality of pass into the box was much better, because against Brentford and Everton, right, I didn't think he was as bad. He wasn't getting beyond Saka as much. You could see the fatigue was starting to show in him. But it was my main worry and my main area of concern was his final delivery. And he was looking like a centre-back playing at right-back when he was getting to cross the ball. But in this game, he played a massive part for the first goal, where Tyrone Mings headed away. Poor header, by the way. And Tyrone Mings showing why I don't rate him. And a lot of you guys in the chat don't. But it was his run down that right channel, crossing it in, Mings heading it away, and Saka was able to sweetly put that ball in the back of the net. And I thought he did that, and he's shown real, intent to go forward. And I think he wanted to show Arteta, no, this is why you started me for this amount of games. I lost my pace to Tomiyasu in that Manchester City game, and I'm going to take it right back as soon as I can in the next opportunity. And I thought he was good when he came on against Manchester City too, but the game was already done by then, unfortunately. But yeah, I thought very impressive from Benjamin White, and his stock just keeps on rising for me. And defensively solid. There was no issues coming down his side at all. In that sense, not really, no issues in down there. And then neither really in Zinchenko when he gave the ball away. I spoke about him already in terms of his performance in that second half. And basically, the next one I'm going to speak about now is Granit Xhaka, because I did say we was going to speak about him, and I got Moss's comment starred in here from earlier on. Xhaka's redundant looking still, and Zinchenko is everywhere. And I think you're right, Moss, in terms of Xhaka's redundancy at this moment in time. And I think there's a couple of factors leading to it. The two big factors being Xhaka's loss of confidence and loss of form since the World Cup. Overall, since the World Cup in many games. However, he did look very well in that first half against Manchester City. I thought he was our best player in that first half up against Manchester City. And those of you that were watching live, you'd have known my thoughts. But then we saw the Xhaka of, that we've seen post-World Cup return in the second. And for me, it's a loss of confidence that we're seeing in those final third positions and not being able to make those progressive passes. I think he's playing within himself. And by that, I mean he's playing safe. He's playing the safer option more times than he's not. And the best example of it is when you saw Granit Xhaka at his best at the start of the season, like against Brentford, Tottenham, etc. In that Brentford game, he crossed the ball first time in that left half space to find Gabriel Jesus at the back post, and he scored the goal. Against Tottenham, he took the shot that was outside the box, and he was making runs in and beyond in that left half space channel. The space isn't there as much because defenders tend to sit a bit deeper. But I also think he's not making those runs and pressing beyond the centre backs and making those runs in behind because of the lack of Jesus and him not being there and the reason why I think Xhaka trusts Jesus more when he drops deep and when he cuts out to that left position. And for Jesus to hold the ball, and if he doesn't keep the ball, Jesus will win a free kick. And two, that Jesus will occupy the space and track back and do a good defensive job of covering for him in the certain zones that he will leave behind as he goes into that striking position. I think those are a couple of factors right there with Xhaka's performance. And because of that, until Gabriel Jesus is fit and firing, and I'd be looking to make the change. I know a lot of people have said, let's make the change now. We'll bring in a Zinchenko into that position and let's start Kieran Tierney. I actually don't think that's the change. And my reason being is when I look at that first goal that Aston Villa scored, that was Zinchenko, our left back, in a orthodox left back position where the space was closed down. He wasn't in a central area, so the options weren't to his left he didn't have three ways to turn in a way. He only had one way to try and play. And I see this a lot with Kieran Tierney where he takes a lot of them positions and he will either go down the line or just boot it out for a throw in or something, or kick it into the car park, bearing in mind. And that's not a major criticism. I mean, it's just the way that how we're playing at this moment in time. I don't think you can do that and sit and expect Zinchenko to have the freedom and the freedom to take up the positions that Granit Xhaka would, or that we want to in this team. Because if we're going to have wing backs that are going to fly in behind and stay high and wide, then that's going to change our left wingers position. That's going to change Xhaka's, and that's going to change that left centre mid position, or one of them. And you're certainly not taking Odegaard out of the team and go back to a more 4-2-3-1. So having two at the base that we saw last season at Arsenal, because it's just the certain zones that they take up. And Arteta is quite meticulous, right, in how he wants his team to be set up in and out of possession. And why Arsenal's counter press has been so effective this season is for that very reason. Is because he knows whether Zinchenko's there or not, someone else is comfortable to fill into that zone right there. And whether it's Gabriel when Zinchenko goes forward and he goes into where Zinchenko lands, wherever that may be, Gabriel fills in there, and then Partey fills into that Gabriel position, and then White comes in and then fills in there as that happens. And then Xhaka, you may see Xhaka dropping a bit deeper, and he's more likely to cover in these left spaces as well and feel more comfortable. That's why I can't see Tierney doing it. And the best way to look at it is when Tierney has come on a lot of the time, he's come on in that left wing position where Martinelli has been. Before we signed Leandro Trossard, it was Tierney coming on that left wing. And I can remember it against, was it Manchester United? Who was it who we played at home? It might have been Manchester United. It might have been Tottenham as well, actually, in that Tottenham game where Tierney came on in that left wing position because he feels more comfortable out wide, getting that chalk on his boots. So I think I'm not saying Tierney, I don't even know if he'll get sold, because I think Arteta is really, really working on him. And we have seen it in Europa League games where I think he's done well, but, still shown elements in his performances where I'm not sure he can take up that role right there. So I think the change is, and I'll show you on my screen, is Fabio Vieira. But, right, I think you can only do it when Thomas Partey is back. And one of the big reasons why Fabio Vieira is because that's the substitution that Arteta keeps making when we are behind or when we need to grab a goal. The first one to come off is Granit Xhaka. So I think that he is looking at that. And we've seen with Arteta, when he keeps taking off a player first, he knows he's thinking of this, for the long term. And we saw it with Trossard coming on for Martinelli. Trossard gets his start, but Martinelli's kind of, when he's come off the bench, he's really shown that, I should be starting. And I don't really think it's too much of Martinelli's fault why he's looked a bit redundant on that left side as well a lot of the time. I think it's just a systematic problem that we're having at this moment. And if we're going to get the best of Martinelli back again, this is why Vieira needs to come in. But only if and when Thomas Partey is fit. If we brought in a Vieira, right, and started Vieira in a game where Jorginho is there, I'm thinking of defending set pieces now. And this is what I think this is why I think Mikel Arteta is reluctant to do so. Because in an aspect where we're going to have to defend set pieces, I've mentioned this in the Man City game, right? Losing Thomas Partey is bad enough, when you think of in transition and you're coming back there. But we have looked susceptible at points when defending set pieces. When Everton scored that goal, who was off the pitch? Can you remember? Of course you can. It was Thomas Partey. He was off the pitch, and that was the first corner that they had in that area there. And they was able to go on to Ødegaard, peel off the back there, and Jorginho, brilliant. Loved him sort of late. But defending set piece, he's just not the physical presence that Thomas Partey is in that central area. So I think that's a big reason why he's been reluctant to take out Granit Xhaka out of this team. And that kind of shows, right? Because when we need a goal, he's the first one he's taking off now. And Fabio Vieira is the first one to come on. So Vieira being more comfortable in those areas, in those tight spaces where teams are sitting back against us now. If Partey was fit for Leicester, I'm more than sure that Fabio Vieira comes in. I'm more than sure. And I mentioned the reasons why I don't think Kieran Tierney does, as I'm not sure he's comfortable in the zones that he wants our left back or full backs to be playing in as well. Because Zinchenko doesn't often overlap Martinelli, does he? He doesn't. The only overlaps we really see is on the right, and that's because White is in there, and Ødegaard works well inside that half space, and he's much more comfortable. And I think maintaining that left footer on that side also gives you a little bit of balance, as Vieira, when he came in against Wolves, he was massive. When Xhaka was ill in that game, just before we entered I was about to say lockdown then, not all the way then, but just before we went into the World Cup, Vieira came in that game at Wolves and had a big part to play for the first goal. And I thought he was brilliant in that and cutting it back for Ødegaard in that sense. So I am looking forward to this. And Vieira's got a ridiculous output, by the way, for someone that's not had many minutes, whether it's been in the Europa League, FA Cup, or in the Premier League. He's actually contributed to quite a decent amount. I don't have the figures to hand right here, but that is the change that I'd be looking to make. And let me see what you guys are saying in the comments, because we've got plenty of them in the chat. So let's go from here right now. I want to hear what your thoughts are. Mr. Wesberg says White needed that performance. It will do him the world of good. It will indeed. And hopefully, just like for Arsenal on the side, that we can build upon that and we can get back to the consistent levels that he's shown, because we can't criticize his consistency for a long stretch. He's been performing at a good and high level for. Slightly off topic, but would he get an international call-up after the World Cup? Is this Benjamin White we're saying, or is it Eddie Nketiah? I'm not too sure, but Benjamin White, I'm not sure. This is what I think another thing's had to play in his mind in terms of that, and another element, another factor in terms of the slight drop off in his performances. I think whatever happened with Steve Holland, whatever happened at the camp, was that. Looks fatigued. Indeed, I do agree with that. Xhaka needs a break. He looks tired. I would rest him for a couple of games as soon as Partey is fit and play J20 alongside Partey. Interesting. You know what? J20 is once again, I think him and Partey work in the same area in this Arsenal team. So unless we was consolidating a lead, or unless it was an area that against a team or against a specific opponent where we was looking vulnerable in that moment, I don't think he would play J20 and Partey a lot. And I don't think, and we'll see it for specific occasions, or it'll be one or the other in that sense. So yeah, until Emile Smith-Rowe gets in there as well, maybe we're talking something different. No worries, my brother. No worries at all. And that's it. Yeah, and Wesberg's agreeing with me there. Can J20 fit in for when Xhaka, when TP comes back? Once again, it's not the fact that I don't think he has the ability. I just think it's more of the zones and what he kind of wants within those zones right there. Do you know what? I'd like to be proven wrong. Yeah, because he's got the technical ability to do it. And I think he's probably more nimble than Xhaka. and he's got the progressive passing better than Xhaka in that sense. But I think J20 does it work at his best when he's dropping in a bit deeper and he's being that deep line playmaker. That's when he's been at his best for Chelsea. That's when he's been at his best for Italy. And that's when he's been at his best for Arsenal in these couple of games. Big up yourself. It's a couple thing. Hope you're keeping good. Thank you for tuning in right here. I don't think Arteta will drop Xhaka if Partey is not available, as he doesn't trust Tierney to do the job that Zinchenko can. I agree with that, but I agree with that last part in trusting Tierney to do that job. Because even when I saw against Manchester City, right, when we didn't perform bad as a team, there were specific moments that I know was really going to annoy Arteta. And when he was just going kicking it long or just booting it down the line, when he wants us to keep possession and play through the lines, Tierney doesn't quite do that to the same level of comfort or height or ability as a Zinchenko. Whereas Vieira, I think that might be the move that happens when Thomas Partey is back, though, and possibly might even see a Tomiyasu coming at left back if we did do that, and Tomiyasu starting there. We'll have to wait and see, just to give us that more stability in both boxes. J20 simply takes more a forward role. He progresses the ball forward. I think it'll work. Yeah, do you know what? I think that's what you and Ed are kind of saying as well. And I'm thinking about it more, Mr. Westbird. And I'm thinking, you know what? I think it could work because his progressive passing and playing forward was excellent. And in the game against Man City and Aston Villa, Aston Villa was outstanding in those high areas, which is what we'd be expecting our left eight to be doing. So I could see it working. It's just whether Arteta wants that to happen. Do you know what I'm saying? So we'll see. If it does happen, I'm giving credit to you and Ed, all right? For sure, because you were the first people to really mention it. Is Saka the best young player in the Premier League right now? Saka's one of the best players in the Premier League right now. And that is crazy. I was on Eagle Eye Football last night and I was talking about... we was talking about Rashford and Saka because there's a lot of comparisons there. And there was a lot of debate, and there was me, trying to show him my Arsenal heart and stuff like, I'm backing my boy Saka. But I'm thinking the fact that we're having this conversation about Bukayo Saka and him being comparing to 26-year-olds, and Arsenal fans are complaining about that, and I'm like, embrace it. The reason why is because Saka is performing at a ridiculous level, and he's got the output now to prove it. 17 goals and assists in 23 Premier League games. That's serious stuff at the age of 21. Do you know what I mean? That's really good. And 9 goals and 8 assists, and we're over halfway through the season. The goal on my target for him was 10 and 10. If he could get 10 and 10, I was going to be impressed, and he's well on course for that. And if he gets 10 and 10, it's disappointing end to the season for Saka for what he's done so far. So the goal now, because the target has shifted for Arsenal, the target and the focus has shifted for Saka, he's going to be easily looking at 15 and 10 minimum by the end of the season with the fact that he's on penalties, and hopefully we can get more penalties as well, because I think we've had 2 penalties this season against Liverpool and Manchester City. So yeah, hopefully we can. And he's definitely up there. His influence on games, even taking away the statistical point of view, how the cojones that he shows and the influence he has on big games and big moments is huge. And the penalty he took against, it's a shame that we lost to Manchester City, because we would be talking about that penalty for years to come, right? After the World Cup, the Euros disaster. So in Arsenal's biggest game of since the Emirates era, that was, and he did it, and he was stepped up strong. Let's have a look. Good afternoon to yourself as well, Amy. Hope you're keeping good. Thank you for tuning in. Wesbird saying, but I do think you can play Tierney more as a winger, definitely. But he's probably defensively better than Zinchenko, but doesn't give you the all-round game to the same standards as Zinchenko. Absolutely agree with you there, Wesbird, in terms of Tierney. I think he's more comfortable when he's getting chalk on his boots, getting crosses into the box. And I think when Jesus comes back, who He's better in the air than Eddie Nketiah, and only better because of taking his chances. Having said that, Eddie Nketiah did score against Man United in the air with a back post run. Mate, there's still a role for Tierney in this team. I really do think so. A lot of people are talking about how he feels like he's been frozen out the squad. He's not getting brought in. I don't think the games and the situations that we've been in has required us needing to bring on Kieran Tierney, in all honesty, and to cross into the box, which is exactly what these big defenders at Brentford, Everton, and Aston Villa and Mings and Konza want us to whip balls into the box. That's not the game state. When you know what I'm saying. So I do think there is a role for him still. He's just in a development stage at the moment, and that's fine. We've seen players have to take a moment out. Look at Jadon Sancho, right, at Manchester United. He was he was frozen out for a period because he was having to deal with certain things, and Erik ten Hag wanted to see him improving in certain areas. And look at him now. Look at him now in recent games. So I think he's just in this period where we're trying to develop him, and he's working hard, and Arteta credits and praises his character and mentality throughout. For me, Saka is in the top 5 PL, full stop, no age limit. Definitely, Saka is the best English player since Wayne Rooney, I'd say, and that's that's crazy. No, not crazy talk. I'm saying that's crazy for us, Arsenal, to have a player like that, and he's only 21, and the future is still bright. And I really am happy to have this guy. And it's why it's my favorite player as well. My favorite player, Mr. Westbird. Get that Saka contract sorted, priority. All of those reasons, as well as the fact he's coming from the academy and other personal reasons. He's you know what I'm saying? He's a Christian and that. But no, I really do love the man in Bukayo Saka, and his humility and a character too. Saying it quite confidently but quietly, I think his career ends up better than Rooney's. Ooh, that's big. Hey, sorry, I said it a bit too loud for you. But talking about Bukayo Saka, I've got some stats for you here. Look at the improvement from last season, right? And last season was his best season in an Arsenal shirt. This is Premier League stats that you're seeing right here. So the key ones in terms of goals, he scored 11 goals overall in the Premier League last season. He's already on 9. So he's well on course to smash that. He already has more assists than last season. He had 7 and he's already got 8. He's taking less shots per game as well, looking at it, but he's improving in his key passes per game ever so slightly as well. His conversion rate has taken a big boost in all honesty. He went from 11.3% to almost 16% in 15.8. That, by the way, is a huge boost. So he can see his finishings improving as well, taking on more dribbles and even doing better defensively. So the statistics are there to show, and we're seeing it on the influence of this Arsenal team. I do think a big reason of those statistics that I've just read out for you there, the key ones in terms of his key passes and assists even, is improved because he's got a better Arsenal team that are much more functional and better quality of players, and players that are knowing what more comfortable in certain areas than we had last season, a la a striker in Eddie Nketiah and Jesus. So yeah, man, it's honestly amazing to have the level that he's been at, and that's why he was up there for one of the man of the matches in that game. This is some of his stats from the game on Saturday. Sorry, he had 83 touches, which is one of the most out of any player in the pitch. He had 10 duels won. We know how much he gets kicked, and that was the most out of any players. He wins his duels, every duel that he has, 1v1. When we like to watch players, we like to see wingers, dance past their fullbacks. That's classed as a duel one. But Saka doesn't necessarily, he doesn't dance past. He moves them out of the way with his strength and balance and agility. He's brilliant, man. 6 shots, 4 tackles made, 3 dribbles completed, 2 shots on target, 1 goal. Brilliant. Excellent, man. Excellent performance. And there's someone, and there's someone that we haven't really even spoken about and who had a massive influence on this game was Martin Odegaard. His fluidity, he really grew into the game after that kick he got from Tyrone Mings. He really grew into it. And after the missed chance that he had, that's the character that we want. And that's what we like to see from Martin Odegaard, because people question Martin Odegaard in terms of his character and question that, he goes hiding in some games that they say. And something that I've leveled at him as well, and it's something that I still want to see him, and I'm trying to work out, is it an Ødegaard issue or is it a systematic issue when we're not getting Ødegaard into these certain areas that we need to, right? There's some games where Manchester City, he's ineffective, and he wasn't as effective as we want him to be, like as he was against Spurs. He was brilliant there against Spurs. He was fantastic, and he had a massive influence. When the game begins to get stretched, Martin Ødegaard is beautiful. What a player. And that's when he gets into it. When the game's getting tight and players are getting in and around him and kicking him, you don't necessarily see the same type of performance that you get from Saka, which he rides it and he doesn't care. He brushes him off. But in this game, I saw a different side to him. He got that kick. His level improved. He had that missed opportunity, but he kept persevering. I think that was excellent for Martin Ødegaard. And when Ødegaard's getting the most touches in the game, you're having a laugh as well, guys. And that's why it's so important for him to really maintain this level for the rest of the season for us, because he's one of the key players in the spine, as well as Saka on that right in there, especially until Emil Smith-Rowe gets back into the team. But definitely Ødegaard, what a player. And what a performance he had in that second half too. Saka is a national treasure and a wonderful talent. Absolutely agree with that right there. The injury issue with Tierney will always be there. Do you know, I've not even thought about that, Mr. Westbird. It's an excellent point. I've kind of forgotten about Tierney's injury issues as well. And that's another reason why you can't build a system for Kieran. You can't build a team for him just because of availability. I'm sure Arteta would like to, and he's learned from his mistakes that you can't build a team reliant upon Kieran Tierney just because of his availability. And it's not even about his ability, it's the availability. And what's the best ability? Availability. Ask any employer. We need players who are available to play 80% of the time. They cannot influence a game from a sick bed. Indeed. Great point you brought up right there, Mr. Westbird. I'm saying his England career ends up with 40 plus goals and countless trophies. I hope for you guys it's with an Arsenal team, but if not, he can play in any league and any team and a star. I absolutely love the boy. I'm sure he will with the direction that we're going with at Arsenal, and I certainly hope so. But yeah, I do hear what you're saying. 40 plus. That would be big if he was able to do that. 40 plus. That would be huge for someone who started at left wing back for the first majority of his England career. Amy saying Trossard needs to start too. Okay, so Trossard in that game against Leicester. Would you start Leandro Trossard in that game against Leicester? I want to make this a poll for you guys in the chat before we end the show. As Jorginho won man of the match, rightly so. I've got an intelligent community here at Tariq Talk, so I really do appreciate that. So I'm going to put this in here for you. Does Trossard start against Leicester? Let me know. I think it's an interesting one. I'll pop that in there and have a look before we end the stream, of course. So good evening to yourself, Mr. 200. Just started from the beginning. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the intro as well. Guys, I will recommend at the end of this show, before you get in the comments, when we end the show, just scroll back to it's only like the first 10 seconds or something. I wonder if you'll enjoy it. I tried something new. I still kept the Wagwan, everyone, though. Don't forget. Don't worry about that. I think Ødegaard is pure class, but I wasn't happy with him laughing on the touchline with Haaland. Leave your friendship till after the game. Westbird, I hear you on that one, because you're talking to someone when it's game time. I don't business about friends at that moment. So, yeah. That's not my style, but that's not my style. So I'm with you, but I'm also trying to look from a different perspective where these players spend a lot of time together, and that I guess it's quite hard to at that moment in time. But right when you're on the battlefield, I'm from the era. I say eras where I'm come from. I'm not Ødegaard's age, so he's got no excuse. But yeah, like from the rivalries that we saw in Arsenal, Manchester United, you don't see that. And that was a hindrance as well for the England team, which was spoken about by Frank Lampard and Rio Ferdinand. But yeah, I don't like seeing that, and Luke's the same here. Don't like seeing that either. But I say it's a little gripe. It's a little one. I'm not a fan of the fun and giggles players have these days. I agree there, guys. Dap up before and after, but not during. Exactly that there. Mr. Westbird, he said his reason I would start Trossard down the left wing, Martinelli through the middle, and Saka down the right. Drop Eddie for the game against Leicester. I do hear that. And that's what a lot of Arsenal fans were saying prior to the game, prior to the Aston Villa one. But he did stick with Eddie. So I'm happy with that, and I'm not going to complain if that happens. And I'd be excited to see it, in all honesty, because I think Martinelli and Trossard can interchange in that area there. Do I think it will happen? No. I'm about 70. I'm about 90% sure that won't happen, just because of Arteta. He really throws trust in players, and for Eddie to sign the contract that he has signed, and he's kind of given him these assurances of, I'm going to give you these running games that you wanted and that you've deserved and that you've kind of earned over this. And I don't think his level has dropped so low where Arteta would make that change. It's not the fact that Arteta is afraid to make changes like that. No, I just think he has a certain level of, if you achieve the non-negotiables, then I'll trust you. The same gone for Saka as well. As long as you're giving me a good level of this and the key factors, I'll keep trusting you and you will get the results. I think that's how he looks at things as well. So basically, in terms of in a tangible sense, for Eddie Nketiah, he's pressing just as much as he should do. He's getting involved in play as at the minimum of what Arteta would want. And he's also getting in the opposition to take opportunity to get those chances. I think what Arteta and how he's looking at it is, as long as you keep working hard and you keep doing those things, your goals will come. Your goals will come, Eddie. So I think, and as long as I just keep giving you those opportunities, you will end up doing it. So yeah, I think that's how he's looking at it. But I agree. I would just from a stylistic point of view, I think Martinelli, the connections with Trossard and Martinelli down in there, and it would even free up Xhaka a little bit. I think so. Yeah, I'd do it, but I'm not sure if he would. And maybe even a J20 in there as well. Missed the early 2000s rivalry. Indeed, Amy. I do as well. I want that bite again. That the fans, I've still got the little anger towards Man United fans, but definitely. And Luke saying here, bring back the Vieira and Keane days where there was almost fighting in the tunnel. I love the animosity, indeed. Yeah, it's good. It really gets you motivated and it really gets you behind your team a lot as well. Martinelli as the CF, is that an option, Gooners? I don't know him as well as you guys, but I have major reservations. Do you know what, bro? Mikel Arteta publicly stated about not last season, 2 years ago now, 2 seasons ago, I see Martinelli's future as a number 9. But Martinelli was the one who said, no, I want to play out on that left wing and I see myself there. And Martinelli had a few games as a number 9. And this was during, do you know, this was the lockdown season with COVID when, we had that poor season where we finished 8th. But Martinelli was played in a number 9 in a few games, and he didn't really do well then. But 2 years further on, I'm sure of it. Arteta will give him another opportunity at some point in the near future. Not sure if it's this season, maybe next season, but I'm sure he will. But yeah, the reason why I'd say that, I think Martinelli may drift too much, lose the focal point you need without Jesus. I hear that indeed, because he does mentally prefer and he feels more comfortable playing out on the left. But when he does drift inside though, bro, and I do think he causes a danger. And the best example, that I'm sorry to bring this up, was against you when he came in off that left. But coming in off the left is different to starting in the middle. Do you know what I mean? I understand receiving the ball, you're back to goal and whatnot. And in congested areas, whereas coming into it, you get to dribble and drive your face and opponents, and it's harder for them to defend against you in those moments there. So, but he does end up in the middle a lot, Have you noticed that as well? We saw it against Manchester City. He started out wide a lot of the time, but ended up drifting inside, but just wasn't being found with his inverted runs, unfortunately. Jesus drifting is more measured than I think they imagine Martinelli's would be. Yeah, it's more intelligent. I guess it is more intelligent. I would start Martinelli away alongside Eddie and Starboy. I think I might be with you. I think I'm with you, you know. I'm not against Eddie being dropped and Martinelli being brought in, but I don't. I also want to give him another chance here because I do think that his performance, the fact that he got into those opportunities against Aston Villa, I think he deserves it, and he will score. He will. I would start big up my brother King in a place as well. I would start Trossard and Nelly. Martinelli, I'm not sure would suit playing the CF. I agree, Ed. Arteta has had plenty of opportunities to play in there, but hasn't chosen to do so for quite some time. Indeed, Martinelli, Trossard, Saka would be my front three trio. Interesting, guys. Interesting. Me and Ed and Luke have gone with that, but it seems like a lot of you guys have gone with the Trossard, Martinelli, and out of the 7 votes we got now, it's 83% yes and 17% no. Interesting, guys. If I was voting, you know what I'd do? I'd certainly go in there and drop it on. I'd keep Eddie for now. I've got so much trust in him, man. I feel like Wilf. I feel like I'm being Wilf at this moment in time. And Amy says Arsenal better not have the mindset that they've already won the match before they started. Thankfully, Amy, I don't think we have that anymore within our side. We certainly shouldn't after what we've experienced in the last 4 games. Although we won against Aston Villa, we certainly shouldn't be thinking like that. And I don't think we will. We've got the right mindset. We've got the right coaching staff in Arteta who will be making sure these players are well drilled. But as you said, let's hope that they don't have that mindset as well. Guys, I am going to wrap it up from here. We've spoken about it quite a bit in here. I do recommend go checking out that intro, people. Make sure you don't forget to do so. If you're already watching this afterwards, you're going to be like, yeah, it weren't that funny. Move on. But yeah, do check it out, people. And go check out the rest of the stream as well. If you did come on towards the end, I really do appreciate you all. I'm going to be running off now. So I hope that you have a good rest of your evening. Arsenal 2 points clear at the top. We didn't even speak about Manchester City, but we had such interesting debates and conversations in here. So it was a pleasure having you all. Good night, people. And guess what? We've got Super Mick Arteta.